Hey, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. I am your host, Devon Harris. And yeah, man, you know what we do here, right? We share ideas and insights that are going to challenge you and inspire you to live your absolute best life because that's what we want of you, for you, and from you. So if that's something that you are even remotely interested in, I have good news. You're in the right place. So again, welcome to Keep On Pushing TV. Have an amazing guest for you today. He is a former NFL player, uh, quite the athlete. The dude is a three-time American Ninja Warrior. Imagine that, right? But he's also an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, a coach, the host of the R Shift podcast. I'm really excited to be able to welcome Anthony Trucks to the show. Anthony, welcome to Keep On Pushing, bro.
Hey man, thank you for having me. I love your accent. I'm not gonna lie. It's like we've talked, but like I just now heard it all, and it's all of its splendor. It's funny because when I mess around with people, I'm like, yeah, man, it's Anthony from Jamaica. I use my stupid Jamaican accent because it doesn't sound good at all, but I play around with it.
Well, you know what, I've been living here for over almost 30 years now, and people go, "Wow, your accent is still very strong." Well, to be honest, I'm not trying to change it. I
Yeah,
just speak English, and it hasn't
that's what it is. It's
it
cool.
hasn't left me. But it's
I
all
like
good.
it.
It's what makes me unique,
Yeah,
and cool, if I might add.
I agree, man. It's a cool accent. It really is.
But hey, man, you see, if somebody was looking in from the outside, looking at your life now, they'll go, "Wow, he's on an amazing ride." But I know a little bit more about your bio. So
Mhm.
talk to us about how rocky that journey has been for you.
Yeah, it goes way back to like my early childhood, and I will give the fast paced Reader's Digest version. But yeah, no, I was given away at 3 years old in foster care, so the beginning of my life started in that place that a lot of people get to at some point, which is I feel like I don't matter, I feel unloved, I feel lost, like that feeling of like what in the world am I supposed to do? So I started my life there. Bounced around from house to house from 3 to 6 years old. I think 5 different foster homes with a lot of just bad people, a lot of people that just treated me really poorly, like physical abuse, emotional abuse, weird things. And then ended in my family, which is my family now at 6 years old, but wasn't adopted till I was 14. But in that house, I was the only Black person in all white, very poor family. So we grew up in a very interesting dynamic, man. Didn't have money, didn't have a place where I felt comfortable at ever. And then at
Yeah,
14, I got adopted, and I could finally say that this is a place that I'm gonna lay my head tonight for sure.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know for a lot of years, like this is a place that's home now. And then I played football for the first time, was horrible at it because that's how you are when you first try things.
So
And I was like,
how old were you then?
14. Didn't
Mm,
play till I was 14, man. And I was like, 5, 6 years behind my peers. So I didn't have the skill sets. I'm running around this little helmet knocking around on my head. But figured it out after a couple of years. My mom got diagnosed with MS, my adoptive mom. My brother went to the military. I was one of 6 in that family. And I had this awakening of like, I'm going to figure out how to be great at this thing. And so we were just talking about like, our childhood compared to our kids' childhood.
yeah,
And back then, you didn't have to ask me to get up and work out. Like you had to stop, you had to pull me out of the weight room.
hmm,
Like that was just my mentality, and it made me a better athlete. And I progressed on to going from a horrible athlete my fresh like 14 and 15-year-old year to getting moved to varsity. A couple years later, getting a scholarship to play at Oregon, and then there's a ton more journey. But yeah, at that point, by the time I was 18, man, I was a freshman in college at the University of Oregon on a football scholarship, and I'd beaten all the statistical odds of like a foster kid.
right.
Because most foster kids, if you look at any prison in America, 75% of the inmates are former foster kids, 50% of the homeless population, and less than 1% of us ever graduate college. So just getting into college, that was a feat in and of itself,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, some would say just staying out of prison was a feat in itself, given
Yeah.
the odds, man. But it seems like, there were these long odds and incredible instability during those early years.
Mhm.
How do you navigate that?
Yeah, you do it by survival, I think, at a certain extent. And I wasn't an angel. Don't get me wrong. Like I was arrested at 17 for doing dumb stuff with friends and breaking into cars. Just dumb kid things. Because when my mom got sick, my dad was taking care of mom, and so what happens is there's no focus on the rest of us. We're just running amok. My dad's working. He's up at 4 a.m. You know, he's home by like 4 or 5 p.m. He's back in bed by like 8 or 9. You know, and so like, dude,
Yeah.
we were just running the house, and so. The stability wise, like I wasn't taught how to do academics in school because no one in my family, none of the kids besides me graduated from the high school. It was always continuation or GED.
Right.
My mom had my brother when she was 14. My grandma had my mom when she was 15. So she was a 29-year-old grandma.
Yeah.
So I don't come from this lineage of like academics, you know? So it was
No
far,
stability, it seems.
no stability.
Yeah.
And I think when you asked what it was, I had something, and we all have to find this thing. I had within football something that I desired to be great at. Like, and not that I wanted, like, because I think want is one thing. I can want $1 million, $1 billion, and never go after it. When I desire something, though, like, you can't sleep until you get it. And I
Right.
desired to be the best football player I could because it gave me a sense of self-worth. It made me feel like I mattered. And when you can, as anybody listening right now, when you can land on something and say, this makes me feel good about me, you'll desire to do not only that thing, but what it takes to be great at that thing.
Yeah, I know we're going to get into this a little bit more, but I know you talk and you coach about shifting and identity shift.
Yeah.
When, if you look back, when do you make that first shift? Because I'm assuming that
Yeah.
you made several shifts over your lifetime.
A lot. I mean, a lot. Because I mean, even as a kid, like, you know, when I'm like 6, 7 years old, I look back, like I had to shift to the identity of like, I'd always been like, my real mom's white. All other foster families were black. The first white family I was with was the one I'm with now. And that was the first shift of like, oh, like these people don't look like me, operate like me. I don't even have people at my school that look like me. So the
Yeah.
first shift was probably 6 years old. The first pivotal shift, I would say, was the one that went from feeling like a victim, which was I'm this foster kid, my mom is sick, my brother who was my rock, he's off in the military, and I'm just floating. And I had a great reason to check out. I had a great reason to give up football, be a criminal, do dumb stuff. The first shift was the one where I was sitting in English class, Mr. Howell's English class. It was freshman year of high school. After the first football season, I'd had a bad season again, and I was like, I'm done. I'd bring this black jacket I'd put over my head. I'd sit at a desk. I'd eat a bag of cereal in the morning. I wouldn't do class, completely checked out. And then I got this gift that we rarely get from many people. And the gift was a really simple one. There's 2 girls sitting next to me, and one girl is talking to the other girl. And she says, well, the reason I'm so bad is because I'm in foster care. And I don't know who she was. To this day, I wish I knew. But what the gift was, I got to hear my excuse for giving up out loud and hear how stupid it was. I was like, what? That's going to be my excuse for the rest of my life, that this thing that I had no control over, this was the thing that was beating me up. Like, and I don't know what it was, but that first identity shift was me back then saying, that's not going to be who I am. I'm not going to be this girl 30 years from now saying these things and being in jail or being a bad dad or being a bad just person. So the first shift was like, I'm going to be better than what the world would expect of me. And I was about 15 years old. That was the first catalyst, man. I just decided at that time, like, I am now going to, this is the big thing. I'm going to do what it takes to be successful before I knew I would be successful.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that's a huge shift because, a lot of people, whether you grew up in foster care or not, blame our biography, I call it, right? These things that we inherit that we have absolutely no control over. And we allow that to become our destiny as opposed to making that shift, making that decision, as it were. So you hearing that just kind of turn on a light bulb, huh?
Yeah, it did. It was more of a thing. And it wasn't like this catalyst that was like, all of a sudden I'm amazing. I had to earn that amazing feeling. But I just had this thought. Here's what I did. Back then I did think this. I said, I can't guarantee that what I do will be successful, right? Because I had to look at literally, what do great football players do? What do great humans do? I was like, well, I'm not that person yet, but I want to be like them. How do you be like them? We just take the actions. Like, it's pretty simple. Take the actions, but it's hard to do those things, to be consistent, to follow through, to deal with the imposter feeling. And so what it was I couldn't guarantee that if I did the things, I'd be successful, but I could guarantee that if I didn't, I wouldn't.
Wouldn't be. You wouldn't be.
So I just was like, all right, let's do the things. And I little day by day, it stacks and stacks. The day one, I didn't feel good. Day 100, I didn't feel good. But like at some point between like day 100 and day 500, like I got this like, this chest feeling of like, this is who I am.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then what happens is, as human beings, we all will protect what we think we deserve. If I deserve that piece of cake, I'm going to fight my friend for that cake. Hey, you already had it. I deserve that cake, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like you deserve something, you won't fight for it. So when I came back the next year for football, because I'd done everything, I knew in my core, I deserved to catch this ball, to make this tackle. You didn't deserve to knock this ball down, to tackle me. The way that I would approach practice, the way I would approach life was like, I am going to fight for what I deserve. But the only reason I felt I deserved it is because of the days of work I'd put in.
And that's the thing, though, when you initially make that shift and you go from, as you say, a want to a desire. And because you have that desire, that thing in your gut that says, I want to be somebody at whatever it is that I'm doing. It's football. For me, it was track. And then, I think that gives you the impetus to put the work in. And, you make a really interesting point about that imposter syndrome, because I think all of us, when we launch on our journey, because we're not that person yet who can achieve that thing that we set out to achieve, we sometimes feel like an imposter, right? Because we're like, who are you?
You have no proof yet.
But somewhere between day 100 and day 500, you begin to have that feeling that even if you're not that person yet, you're close. And that then gives you additional urge to keep on pushing.
Yeah. That's really what it has to boil down to. And I don't think that there's a day you wake up, like you don't wake up and go like, all right, it's January 23rd, like this is the day I feel great. Yeah. It just happens. And then the people that you meet that are successful, it's kind of like this, they almost like slowly just merge into that person. And then now it's just the way they operate and the way they tick. And those are the people who are individuals who aren't in successful positions yet. They wonder like, how does that person do all those things? Like what they're doing this, I struggle to do this. I can't get, this is so hard for me. And they're doing it every day. Like it's no problem. How is that? And they just got to the point of, and this is how you do it. You fall in love with the drudgery of the day. Like I'm sure you probably, I've never been in Jamaica. I'm looking forward to going one day, but I'm sure at a certain point, like there's almost this, like most people be like, man, hot days, I got to run, let's say, 8 200s at, 90% speed. People look at that and go, oh, that sucks. And it wouldn't be a hard workout, but part of me, the thought of like hard football days, I get like this little bit of joy inside. It's this weird, like I can taste like that's going to be a good hard day. I love that hard work. And when you start doing the work and you get to that point, like I love difficulty. I love those hard, hot, like crazy hard workouts. Walk out like you're just sweaty, dirty. There's a different kind of joy, and that's what separates you. But when you can fall in love with that, when you get to that point, success becomes second nature. It's a byproduct. It will happen.
Fall in love with the suck. It's interesting you mentioned that, because having lived in America for so long, I'm now acclimatized. And I remember this is a number of years ago, being home, and it was maybe 2 in the afternoon, and the sun was at its height, and it was as hot as hell. And I saw kids out running around, and I'm thinking to myself, how the hell do they do that? But then, I had to kind of reflect, a number of years earlier when I was one of those kids, and I was running 10 200s. I was a middle distance runner. So I was running much longer distances in that kind of heat. But you're absolutely, you're right. You embrace the suck. And one day, as I say, you have to put the work in, and sometimes you don't feel like you're making any progress. And I remember my first year in track at 15, dude, it didn't matter how hard I trained. I couldn't hit a certain time. But you kept at it. And then the next year, as I continued my training, I didn't even have to try very hard to hit those times I couldn't hit before. It all accumulates, whether we're talking track or football or sales or whatever it is that you're striving to achieve, right? The suck, when you embrace it, and the growth and the results all accumulate, builds on itself until before you know it, yeah, you're that guy, you're that
Yeah.
girl,
Yeah.
as it were. So lots of instability earlier on,
Hmm.
and I imagine that you got into lots of fights and
Oh yeah.
lots of punishments.
A little
Um,
bit.
yeah. But was it the fact that you discovered sports that got you more focused and got you away from and helped you to deal with some of that anger, I want to say?
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting? I get that a lot. That people assume that because I was that crazy that I had this desire to hit people to take it out, and I don't think I ever did. I think as opposed to being driven by the darkness, I was pulled by like the light, the possibility, the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity that I wanted, that no one in my family had experienced, that I saw all the other kids have that I wanted. So
Mm-hmm.
I was pulled towards, which I think was a different drive for me. If I would have played angry, I think my attitude would have been different. Now, don't get me wrong. I was an angry player though. Like I got in my fair share of arguments and fights, and
Yeah,
I got thrown out of a game one time. But I was just so into the game because like this is who I was.
right.
I was not protecting the football. I was protecting my identity. Like you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to take this is who I am. Like, I have to catch this so I feel good about myself.
Yeah,
And but yeah, football gave me the stability and the outlet. And for some people it's playing the violin, for some people it's jumping rope. It's whatever you choose to lean into. There's
mm-hmm.
a different sense of accomplishment and sense of stability of who you are when you can have this thing that you can say that is what I do
Yeah,
besides just living.
agreed. Because it's giving you a sense of purpose, as it were.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so let's, I read that. Well, let me ask you this before I even go into that. We're
Hmm.
living in a really interesting time right now,
Hmm.
Anthony. And you grew up in a. You said your birth mother was white.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you grew up in an all-white family as well. The only black dude in an
Yeah.
all-white family.
Hmm.
I'm guessing that your school environment, you were among the minority as well.
Oh, very
Uh,
much. Yeah.
so I would argue, have a are sitting in on an interesting perch, as it were,
Hmm.
to view, because you have also experienced, both sides of the fence as well, so to speak, as black and white. Um, give me a perspective on what you observe in our society today.
There's a lot. That's a big question, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
okay.
Give me
I observe.
the cliff notes.
Yeah, the cliff notes are. I genuinely. I can obviously have a definitely more intimate experience with the black experience, right? But then
Mhm.
because of my family and my friends, I get a very good perspective of the plight of white America, right? And it's interesting to say plight because most people in my position would never say like they have a plight,
Right,
right?
right. Hmm.
But what I mean by that is there are some bad humans, just like we have bad cops, and we have bad black people, we have bad white people, we have bad people in the world. That's just is
Yeah.
what it is. But each side is judging the other side based on the worst of the other side, right? So everybody's judging us on the worst, the looters as opposed to those who are protesting, the white supremacists as opposed to just white Americans, the bad cops as opposed to all the cops. So the
Hmm.
way I look at it is this is I'm not neutral because I definitely have had my black experiences. I understand how I'm seen, how I interact, how people interact with me in society, how it's
Yeah.
just I've had those moments.
Yeah.
But then I also realize that there's a lot of great white Americans that are in a difficult place because they want to say something, but anything they say is the wrong thing. If they
Mm.
say I'm in support, well, where were you 10 years ago? If they say, Black Lives Matter, like you don't get my, like struck, like I want to support. Well, you're not supporting the right way. Like no matter what you say, you get shut down. So it's difficult because they want to help, but then they're getting shut down. It's interesting because Black America needs them. We need
Yeah.
them to be in a
Hmm.
position. So it's like I get this pain, but then I also understand, like I understand the pain of Black America and why we're getting, why we're protesting. I'm not saying I would go and loot. I get why people are looting. Like I understand it.
Yeah.
Just because I don't agree doesn't mean it's not right. Right? It's just it is kind of thing. And so I feel it. What I believe is the work to get to unity in some aspect. And I don't even know if unity is the goal. I feel like equality is more of the goal because we may not unite on the same front and perspectives, but if we can at least genuinely see each other as an equal, I think we can move our society forward. So I look at it as a simple metaphor of like there's two houses. Like at one point I got divorced from my ex-wife, and we got back together after 3 years divorced. And like we both lived in different houses that had, I had a girl that lived with me, a woman that lived with me for a little bit, and she moved out. My ex-wife, current wife now, had a guy live with her, and like he moved out. And so we're both in these houses. We want to get back together. Well, she's not going to move into my house because that was another woman's territory.
Right.
And I'm not going to move into her house. That was another guy's territory.
Yeah,
We had to
exactly.
leave these prospective houses and come together. And we both had different work to have that happen, different things that had to be accepted and removed and compromised. And so, but in doing so, we both put the effort in to build a new house that we both feel comfortable in now. And so I feel like that's kind of, we have the houses. White America has a house that is what it is. Black America has a house that is what it is. We're going to have to do different kinds of work that are both very uncomfortable to get to the point of equally putting effort into building a house that is our America.
Yeah.
I don't know when it happens, if it happens, how it happens, but my perspective is we both have to listen to the other side. Even if we don't agree, we have to listen to understand their side, because if I don't have an understanding for the opposite side, I'll never listen to what they have to say. So if Black America doesn't listen to it, white America is not going to listen to us. And if Black America doesn't listen, it's just vice versa.
Agreed. Now, how do you see a need also for, or as well for a shift in identity on both sides?
Dude, that's everything. What's funny is we're looking at a world where essentially what we need is personal development for every human being, because that's what we're talking about. How do I get to the point of acceptance and equality? And part of it's pulling back my ego to accept certain things. Like I have a best friend as a white police officer who we've had some interesting conversations, and I got to the point where I realized, like, he's not arguing. Some of the things he says would seem as if he's a racist. Like I know to my core, I've noticed since I was fourth grade. Right. And it's more so in defense of the police officers in white America, what's going on. And so when I look at it, I was like, oh, he's not really arguing for these racist perspectives. He's just saying things that racists use as their own language. But what he's doing is he's protecting his identity as a white police officer, because if he leans into the opposite, then he has to admit that there's something wrong, that he could have stopped possibly. And that's a hard pill to swallow for people. So I'm seeing things where people are like, oh, they're racist. Like, no, they're not racist. They're doing what any typical person would do, which is protect their position. Because if they step off that cliff and go, okay, I'm wrong, that's a whole nother bag of problems and guilt to deal with that people don't want to deal with. So that's where I see a lot of these dynamics, man. It's a very difficult situation. So identity shift, we all need to have that, myself included. We have to look at what is the identity of the human being that is able to be equal, to able to drop the ego, to able to grow past the point of where I feel like I am perfect. I'll say out all day, I'm not perfect, but how many people really live in that way, So I think we all societally need to understand what personal growth is and actually pursue it. And if we can do it as individuals, then collectively our world moves farther.
I so agree with that, man. I mean, I think part of the big issue is that not enough of us are pursuing this goal of personal development and really being introspective, figuring out who we are at our core and what it is that we truly want. Because I think, that work is one so important and so involved that if you spend more time doing that, honestly, you don't have time to hate other people. And you're able to, I believe, more easily connect and relate to somebody, although they may look and live and believe differently from you. So you mentioned the word ego, which I think is plays a huge role in what we see happening around the country, around the world, the whole business of identity as well. If you admit that what, we may be off base, then our whole identity is shredded, because we are admitting that this belief that we have held for so long is wrong, which might mean that something is wrong with me. But how? Talk to me, Anthony, because you just also mentioned about your wife, that she was your wife, and ex-wife, and now wife again. How did you even begin to navigate that process?
Yeah, I do it from a logic standpoint, which is very hard when you're emotional. but emotions high, intelligence and logic are low.
Yeah.
So we were high school sweethearts. So we were, in the yearbook, the cutest couple. I was homecoming king. She was right alongside of me when I got that award, and then we went to college together and had a kid at, 20 years old as sophomores in college. She was there when I met my real dad for the first time and like found him. I mean, everything you name. We have 3 kids. We had twins after the NFL. She was there through thick and thin when I was in the NFL, the ups, the downs, the cuts, the re-signs, all that stuff. And then when I opened my business, so it was this thing where we grew up together and then we grew apart together, and then we had these just very detrimental parts of just life. Like she had an affair, broke me inside at one point. Like I was like suicidal, genuinely.
Yeah.
And what happens is I get this real dark bottom. And if we go into the work I do, essentially what it is, it's kind of like I look at us like we're computers. And it's weird, but if you think about a computer, I'm on one. Me and you have been trying to figure out this new MacBook Pro you got. Right? It doesn't always work perfectly, but computers have software and they also have programs, right? The Zoom's a program, Chrome's a program. But the software, if the operating software is good, everything runs smooth. But what happens every once in a while, I get those alerts that say, hey, do you want to update this? You go, no, snooze. I don't want to do that right now. I'll try again tomorrow, or hey, well, you want to do this? No, snooze. And eventually the system starts slowing down and then the programs don't open and then like it crashes. And then I got to open in safe mode and cut everything off and it still doesn't work. So I at one point have to update the operating system so the computer can work again. And it does. Software runs amazing. Programs start working great again. Everything's beautiful. Mm-hmm. For us in life, we were kind of like computers. If you think about it, we were unintentionally programmed about love and beliefs and hard work and, what the world looks like when we were like 15, 16. By that time, programming's done.
Yeah.
So a lot of us like in 2020 operating off like Windows 95. And so that was me, like I was this kid who like, this is how I saw the world was right and relationships and love. And so what happens is the updates pop up. And you gotta be better in your relationship. No, snooze that. And you gotta be a better dad. No, snooze that. You gotta take care of your body. No, snooze that. And so I kept snoozing. And all of a sudden I got that spinning wheel of death. Computer crashed, open and safe mode, which is everybody get away. This is just me. I'm gonna work on it, be self-made. And then you're not even using full functionality. So to stop it all, go back and be like, all right, let me download like a computer, download the new software, upload the new actions. So when I look at that marriage bubble, we'll call it, when I went back up, a lot of it was me stepping in and saying, man, where does Anthony really need to take a look at the problems that I got? Because here's the thing. I was out of shape. Business was doing poorly. I was a bad dad, wasn't good in my relationship. I had this hole from football being taken from me by an injury.
Yeah.
And I was the common denominator in all of it. Everything had me in it, right?
Yeah.
So let me take a look at this guy. And so I did that. And in doing so, I had to have some hard realizations, man. That ego had to come back because I was a former NFL athlete, dude. Like to have that ego thing, that's what you live off of. I got to walk out here and you can't smell blood on me. If you do, I'm going to get eaten up alive. So I had to have that. And I call it EGO, everyone's greatest obstacle, ego, right?
Yeah.
And so in doing so, one of the things that was big was I stepped in and started downloading the real parts of honesty of what was going on in my life, what had got me to that point. And I started taking actions that were very difficult. Just like in football years ago when I was 15, I kind of did the same thing. And I call it an updating and upgrading of my operating software. So like I got to reprogram who Anthony was, how he saw things. So like even with that situation, my relationship, for a lot of years, it was all her fault. How could you have an affair? What were you doing? Mm-hmm. But I was at the gym from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and we had newborn twins and she wasn't doing things to hurt me. She was doing them to fulfill her needs. I just happened to get hurt and it sucked, right? So the realization was, man, she made a crappy choice. I'll take nothing from that. But it took me and her to get to a point where she felt she had to make a choice in the first place. I had to take my ownership with that. Like that was a hard hit to take. The business, I had to honestly own, like, I'm not a good businessman. I'm running this business into the ground. I need help. I had to own, like, I'm spending more time training other people's kids than I am hanging with my own children. Like, I was in a gym in the worst shape of my life, so a lot of it was me going in and like owning, like, all right, these are the things that Ant's got to work on. And when I could see them differently, it allowed me to look back at the life I was living, the world I was in, and the future that I had control over vastly differently. It gave me the ability to forgive, genuinely forgive. Like my mom, my real mom, I have no ill will towards her. Like, unfortunately, people are not given all the tools to be successful in life, whether it was their parents that didn't have them, didn't pass them down, they didn't garner them, or they had a hardship they couldn't work themselves out of. Like my real dad, I found him at 21. He had no idea I existed. Nigerian man who had me out of wedlock and didn't know. And then fast forward 9 years before he passed away, he goes, I did know about you all this time. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to tell you. Like, so it's crazy.
Yeah.
Most people be like, aren't you angry? I'm like, yeah, but honestly, at that time, he felt the best thing for me was to not have him in my life in a capacity of being back and forth and living between different states. And like, he was doing the best he could for him. So if anything, some people are selfish. But are you going to be mad that, a zebra, can't put its head down to the ground all the time before it passes out? Are you be mad that a hippo can't be at the head of a zebra, like, or the head level of a giraffe? And so what I realized is like some people, we all have our inabilities, our own struggles. And if I judge somebody on the thing that they lack, then I will always lack a connection or understanding or the ability to release myself from the grab of anger and pain. But once I realize and have a perspective of like, man, this is just their limiting capability, it's not even about me, then I can give them grace and forgiveness, and I can move on in a space for me to be of more light and actually help them in some capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, I was speaking to another guy on the podcast here, Rob Corbin, who, spoke about generational hand-me-downs and the fact that forgiveness is a decision. And,
Mm-hmm.
All of us, I think, are influenced by our parents. And who knows, as you were saying earlier, that they did not necessarily have all the tools to become parents, right? Because they were learning from their parents who probably didn't have the tools as well. And so all of us become, beneficiaries or victims of that that lack of skill and tools in the tool bag to become parents. And then so we end up. He had an interesting statistic. Most of the people who had issues with somebody else, the majority of them, most people had issues with their fathers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the guy that they needed to forgive, and the others were their mothers, right? The two people in your life who, in my mind, should love you unconditionally and who
Unconditional.
that you love back. So let's move forward to you and your kids, because you mentioned that certainly when you're in the gym, you weren't being a good father. But my sense is that you're being an amazing dad now. How does that, and we were talking about your son earlier, how do you relate the experiences that you had as a child with your parents, especially your natural parents, versus the ones you're having with your kids now? Yeah.
I don't even know what they're like, man. I told my wife the other day, I was like, I'm incredibly close to my kids, physically and in our own relationship, but I am completely separate from their childhood experience.
Mm-hmm.
I try to put myself in the capacity. Like, I'm amazed that I'm in the same house as my blood children. Like, it's a weird thing, like that dynamic. Even my wife and I being divorced and getting back together, like we ran a way different route. Like, this was not how it's supposed to go, but we're here now. And so like those kind of things, I'm emotionally distant from their childhood experience, but very close to them, physically and in our own relationship. So I get to experience it through this side, but not through theirs. And I grasp that in my head, unfortunately, I don't think they really get the weight of what they have. In a world where 50+% of people get divorced, and I was in that bubble, and a far less percentage ever get back together. Like their life right now is a fluke, damn near. Like statistically, it's a fluke, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think they get it. I don't think they fully appreciate it. But at the same time, I know there will be a point in time in their life where they're going to run into something or somebody who makes it and they'll be unable to see how transparently their life is better than most people's.
Right.
Like they'll run into a wall where it'll be like just a big flashing light in their face of like, wow, I have that, whether it's a girlfriend or a buddy or a teammate or whatever it is, that they just go, wow, you just explained something to me. Man, I got to give my parents a call and tell them thank you. Like, I feel like that moment will happen. It may take 15, 20, who knows how many years, right? But all I can do at this moment is continue to be the guy that's present, that is communicative, that is everything that I know I didn't have. People always ask me, like, how do you know what to do when it wasn't modeled for you? But it was just in the opposite. So and if I'm aware of that, just do the opposite. Like, how do and I think the thing is, we know when you know right and wrong, your gut tells you what's right and wrong. Your gut just does. Like last night, my son, it was like, I go to bed earlier than the rest of the family. Like I was in bed by probably like 11 o'clock. Everybody else in my house up to like 2. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And so like probably around like 1:30, I hear my son in the hallway yelling. And I'm like, Torian, quiet. So he's doing his thing. He's just yelling at his brother. And I'm awake now, and it bothers me because I'm trying to go to sleep. I got to get up early. I got to hang out with my man Devin.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, like he's doing it again. And my oldest son says, Torian, quiet, Dad. Oh, okay, oh yeah. And then, another maybe a minute goes by. He's yelling again. So I get up and I walk down the hallway, and I'm half asleep, and I grab him and I walk him down the hallway and put him in bed. That it sounds nicer than it was. I pretty much was half asleep, and I grabbed him by his arm like, bro, go to sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm waking up this morning genuinely feeling a little bit like, that wasn't probably the best way to handle that situation. How did he feel? I know I just want to go back to sleep, but he was completely awake and fully experienced it different than I did. And so what I do is like, I in these moments, like I know when he wakes up, I'm going to have a little mini conversation, and I'll have like, hey, wasn't the best way for me to handle that. This is what took place. So like, I'm trying to have these very transparent, clear conversations in ways that weren't done for me. And I just do it based on how I feel. Like if you got a good heart and you love your kids, you'll know what the right thing to do is. But the only reason I wouldn't go talk to him would be because of my ego.
Right.
And my pride. And there's a great song by the rapper Fabulous. I don't know if it's a great song. It's a great line. He says, it's okay to lose your pride over someone you love, but don't lose someone you love over your pride.
Yeah.
So
Do
I do
you
that.
find that to be true generally? What do you notice with their clients? Is a thing that's holding them back that pride, that ego?
Yeah. I mean, that's usually the first issue of it, because in the process I use to adjust this, right? So I talk about identity, and it's all concept, but I'm a very big like process. Here's the framework to fix that. And so there's a method I created that no one else in the world has called the shift method. And the shift method has 3 stages: see, shift, sustain. The shift is the verb. It's the work we do. There's stages within it. There's depth to it. How you design your identity, shift to it. But that's the work. And a lot of people will do work, like, even if it's like halfway work, but we'll go and read the book, we'll go catch the work, we'll do these things, right? And then we'll get to the back end of it and we'll be exhausted, but we'll have no progress. And we'll wonder, why is it I've been doing all this work, but I'm still not any farther ahead? And so what I do is I go back and, I said, well, let's take a look at what you were doing based on the life problems you had that still exist. The work you're doing, they don't match up. You've climbed this ladder, but it's leaned against the wrong building because you didn't do the work that you really should have done. Like in my relationship, I could have, read some books and tried to do some things, but there's different work that I had to pull my ego back and do as a man to be able to show up the right way and do the right work. That's why we have to see. And the C stage of it is the hardest part, because if you don't see what's really going on and give yourself permission to not be perfect, you'll never give yourself permission to improve. And so the ego is one of the earliest, hardest things, because now what I'm doing is I'm poking holes in people's identity, and they don't like it.
No,
It hurts.
because you're telling them they've been wrong, and they've been imposters all this time.
To an extent. And it's hard. And the thing is, it's okay. I mean, everybody started somewhere. Anybody who's anybody started as nobody. Everybody. Right. But the only way that you can start is by giving yourself permission to start. But if you're still stuck, latched on to and hang on to the old identity of like, I'm great, I'm the guy. Like if I was always the former NFL linebacker and that's who I am, I would still be living the horrible life I was living.
Yeah.
In between like the divorce, man, I was living in a 500 square foot studio. My kids would come and sleep on a mattress that was next to my twin bed, like an air mattress, just like this little rickety place. I'd go to my gym in the daytime, train clients, go home, drink a 6-pack of Blue Moon beers, and then go back to work later on in the day. I was living dark, man, because I was trying to hang on to this guy. And the moment I let that guy go and owned like that guy sucks. That guy is the guy who's not that great.
Not incongruent as well.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And that's the thing. And so a lot of people will stick with that guy for the next 40, 50, 60 years until they die. Yeah. And I didn't want that guy's future. I wanted a better one. So I had to change the guy was.
How do you, I think, dude, we may have to have a part 2, but let's really quickly touch on the sustain part of the
yeah. Sustain
is
is
one thing to like I agree with you that seeing it, becoming introspective. I call it the hardest work any of us ever have to do.
Yeah.
You have to get that done, and then you have to get past just reading the book and attending the seminars, right? Getting the information. You have to execute.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
Um,
think the thing is, yes, about sustained portion.
yes,
Yeah.
sustain.
Yeah. So once people get success, not everybody keeps it. Like there's a lot of people who get somewhere and they fall really far off, sometimes very quickly. And so what I realized was there's a couple things I got to do to make sure I never go back to the place I was. So the sustained stage has three areas. It's drive, hive, and thrive. So drive is essentially to make sure I'm driving in the right direction once I'm still down the road, right? To make sure I didn't accidentally make a U-turn and slide back downhill.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing is, am I driving the right direction? And then also check my drive. Do I love this? Am I still passionate about the destination I'm headed towards? Do I still want that destination in my GPS? And if I don't,
Mm-hmm.
change it, right?
Okay.
Because life will continuously put new things in. When I had kids, my GPS changed, right? Because now it's like, I'm not just this guy trying to play football. I'm a father,
Yeah.
When I come home, I have a different career. Like now I'm in this gym, then I was consulting, then I was speaking, right? And each one of those is a different GPS. And it's okay to change the GPS destination. Some people think because I'm headed, I got to get there first. No, no, no. You got to go because maybe while you're driving on this road, like a road trip, you're like, oh, look, the Grand Canyon
Yeah.
detour. I want to go there. It's not bad. You just chose a detour, right?
Yeah.
You can still enjoy the Grand Canyon. It might be more fun than the place you're headed. The second part of it is hive. And for me, I look like life is kind of like it's like a hive, right? You have like honey. Bees in a hive make sweet honey. So I want my life to be sweet like honey.
Right.
And one bee alone can't make all the honey. You need to have this hive of people. So if I'm gonna have a life that's sweet like honey, I gotta have bees that can help me do that. I gotta have people around me. Sometimes it means getting rid of the lazy bees, right? Sometimes people don't belong in my life. And there's a way you can actually cut them out in a way that's ethical and more makes it feel good and makes them be better. And the other part of it is like, who do I have to bring into this hive? Because sometimes it is just as hard to cut people off as it is to go and enter new spaces where I don't feel adequate. The imposter syndrome.
Right.
How do I go into a space where I am the lone man on the totem pole? I sit in a lot of rooms with people that are far ahead of me in business and life. And I feel like I'm like 2 inches tall, I just literally, but
Mm-hmm.
I love doing it because I know that they're going to be the ones that show me how to grow. So I do that, right? So my hive helps me create more. And the last piece of it is thriving. And once you understand how success works, it's kind of simple to grasp. Like once you have success, you feel good at a certain level, like the same success gets lackluster. It sucks, but it does, it is what it is. And so what happens is I look at it kind of like this thing. It's a concept called marginal utility. When I have something, a bunch of something, let's say I have 10 hamburgers. Well, at one point I'm like, all right, well, the first I'm hungry. First hamburger is good. I'm hungry. Second one, I'm like, all right, I'm good. Third hamburger, I don't want any more hamburgers. I'm done with hamburgers, but I
Yeah.
want to feel good still. How do I do that? Well, you take the 7 hamburgers you have left and you give them to the hungry people over there because now they get to feel good and you feel good because you help them feel good. And then you realize, man, I like giving out hamburgers. I don't have any more hamburgers. How do I get more hamburgers so I
Right.
can give hamburgers away? And
Mm-hmm.
now I get to the point of like, all right, I got to see who that next level of an identity is to make more income, possibly to give back. Like I give back to at-risk youth. I want to give a certain amount of money away each year to them. But if I can't give that money away because I'm not making money, then I got a problem.
Yeah.
I got to find out how do I serve ethically and honestly to make more revenue to do something great with that money. I got to find out how to make more hamburgers, right? And then the world spins and spins and spins. And so for me, it always dials back to what are you doing to create so much success that you want to give it away?
Yes, living a life that is bigger than yourself and outside of yourself, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, my man, see, shift, and sustain. I
Mm-hmm.
think those are wise words for us, man. Anthony, I really think we need to have another conversation, but
Count me in, man. Anytime.
no, yeah, want to thank you for spending time with us, sharing your wisdom and your insights, definitely your experiences, thank you for taking us on that journey.
Yeah.
And showing us how you shifted and how we can shift. Very in line with the keep on pushing philosophy. So once again,
Yes.
thanks for sharing with us.
Welcome.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you click on that subscribe button and hit that bell. You'll get a notification every time we post a new video. And don't forget, Share it with your friends, man. They want to be inspired as well, right? So share it. Don't keep it. And before you go on to the next video, visit my website, www.devonharris.com. Keep on pushing.